When you drive around a city like ours, maybe you're sitting in traffic on Nicholasville Road right now, or, taking a scenic route past the historic farms out on Paris Pike.
Yeah, beautiful drive.
Right. You really see the physical realities of how Lexington is being built. Like you see the cranes hanging over downtown, you see the new subdivisions just sprawling outward, and you see those miles of black plank fences guarding that untouched multi-million-dollar agricultural land.
Oh, absolutely. It's so distinct here.
It is. And those physical things, they are the results of a battle. But we never actually get to see the original blueprints that decided, where the cranes would go or exactly where those fences would stop.
Well, the thing is, those blueprints aren't drawn up on construction sites.
No.
No, not at all. They're drawn up in campaign finance ledgers long before the first shovel ever hits the dirt. Because the money flowing into local races dictates the zoning boards, the council votes, and ultimately, the physical geography of the entire city.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that is exactly our mission today. Welcome to a special, locally focused edition of The Deep Dive, airing right here for our Lexington, Kentucky listeners.
Glad to be here.
The May 19th LFUCG, that's the Lexington Fayette Urban County Government, for those keeping track. That primary is coming in hot.
Very hot.
Right, and we are looking past all those flashy political ads and diving into a massive stack of data compiled by the Lexington Times. They ran this incredible analysis of the Kentucky Registry of Election Finance data.
We'll just call it KREF for short, otherwise it's a mouthful.
Yeah, definitely, KREF. Specifically for this primary, we are talking about, 2,080 individual campaign contributions, 1,399 identified donors, and over $623,000 spread across 25 different local candidates.
What's fascinating here is that campaign rhetoric only tells you what a candidate wants the public to think,
Right, the TV ads.
Exactly. But donor data tells you who actually believes in them enough to open their wallets. It tells you who expects them to win, and more importantly, who trusts them to govern in a very specific, often profitable way. You really can't understand these candidates without first understanding the money ecosystems driving local politics right now.
Well, I want to map out that battlefield first, because going through this analysis, it's clear the money isn't just some random assortment of generous citizens throwing $50 around.
No, not at all. It's highly structured.
Highly structured.
Yeah.
The data separates these donors pretty cleanly into three distinct factions. So the first is what the analysis calls the horse farm, or Fayette Alliance cluster.
Right.
We are looking at about $15,000 in tracked money here. This is anchored by the historic preservationists. We're talking about heavy hitters like Mount Brilliant Farm, Winter Quarter Farm, Justice Real Estate.
Yeah, and to really understand the motivation behind that specific group of donors, we have to talk about the defining geographic feature of Lexington.
The urban service boundary.
Exactly, the urban service boundary. Lexington was actually the first city in the United States to implement one of these way back in 1958.
Wow, 1958.
Yeah, we were pioneers in that. It is basically an invisible, strictly enforced line that separates the developed city from the surrounding rural agricultural land.
So inside the line, you get city services.
Right. The city provides sewage, trash, all the infrastructure inside that line. But outside the line, it is incredibly difficult, if not practically impossible, to build high-density housing or commercial retail.
Makes sense.
And the horse farm cluster is fiercely pro-boundary. They are fundamentally anti-sprawl because their entire economic model and really the cultural identity of Lexington as the horse capital of the world, it entirely relies on preserving that agricultural land.
So who are they funding?
In the campaign finance data, you see them heavily funding district candidates like Christopher Woodall. He is getting what we might call pure horse farm money, along with Michael McLaughlin.
Okay, so they are funding the preservation. Then, on the completely opposite side of that invisible boundary line, you have the developer, or BIAC cluster.
Yes, BICK.
BIACK, which stands for the Building Industry Association of Central Kentucky. And this is by far the biggest financial footprint in the data set. They have about $25,000 tracked.
It's a huge chunk of change.
Right. These are the heavy hitters who want growth. They want rezoning. They generally want to push that boundary outward.
We're talking about massive local entities here.
Yeah.
Like Bull Homes, which is the largest home builder in Lexington.
Oh, yeah.
You see Anderson Communities, you see Codell Construction.
Yeah.
Their livelihood depends on Continuous building, new homes, new commercial spaces, just generally expanding the city's footprint.
Because they're running out of space.
Exactly. The land inside the current boundary is getting extremely scarce, which drives up their costs. They need more dirt, period.
So they need politicians who will give them that dirt.
Exactly. In the data, you see this group heavily backing district candidate Richard Maloney. And the numbers for Maloney are staggering. He has 25 donors averaging $889 each.
Wow.
Yeah, it basically reads like the entire central Kentucky real estate industry Rolodex just handed him a check. And they're also throwing significant weight behind Raquel Carter in the mayor's race, which we'll get to.
We will definitely get to that. But real quick, there's a third group which feels a bit entirely separate from, the dirt and the zoning laws.
Right, the third lane.
The progressive, labor, and creative cluster. There's about $7,000 tracked here, so significantly less money. But this is essentially the non-real estate lane.
Yeah, who's in that one?
You have places like West 6th Brewing, Edelin Renewables, and that local apparel brand, Kentucky. They are funding candidates like Stephanie Holscher and Dan Wu.
It's a smaller lane by sheer dollar volume, obviously, but structurally it's a really critical voting bloc.
Because they care about different things.
Exactly. These donors are less concerned with the physical boundary itself and more concerned with the cultural and social fabric inside the city. They represent a distinct modernizing vision for Lexington. They're focusing on things like affordable housing initiatives, green energy, and the local service economy.
Listening to all this, it honestly feels like we are watching a massive real-life game of SimCity.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. You've got one group, the horse farm cluster, spending their money to essentially reinforce a physical wall around the city. Then you've got a second group, the developers, spending their money to buy bulldozers to push past that wall. And then you have this third group just trying to fund the culture and the community living inside it.
That is a very helpful way to visualize the mechanics at play. And I should emphasize, neither a pro-growth stance nor a pro-preservation stance is inherently good or bad.
Right. We're not taking sides here.
Not at all. They simply represent competing visions for the future of Lexington's economy.
Our analysis of the KREF data is really just showing us how the financial backing of those competing visions is being deployed on the ground.
Well, this ideological split over the physical layout of the city forms the perfect lens to look at the biggest race on the ballot, which is the mayor's office.
Oh, the mayor's race. Yes.
Because the money in this race is completely defying the narrative you hear on the street. Like, everyone is talking about this mayoral race between Raquel Carter and the incumbent, Mayor Linda Gorton.
That's all anyone's talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I actually pulled up the state's KREF dashboard myself before we started recording. And if you just look at the top-line summary on the state website, it looks like an absolute bloodbath.
It really does.
Carter is showing $162,744 raised compared to Mayor Gorton's $38,000. So on paper, it looks like the challenger is crushing the incumbent 4-1.
Yeah, but those raw dashboard numbers are incredibly misleading if you don't dig into the individual line items.
Why? What's hiding in there? Well, the data analysis reveals a massive asterisk on Carter's top-line number. Out of that $162,000, over $52,000 is a self-loan.
Oh.
Yeah, she essentially just wrote her own campaign a check.
Okay, I see. I mean, a self-loan is a common tactic, sure, but it completely distorts the public perception of community support if you just glance at the total.
Exactly. But to be fair, even if we strip that 52 grand away, Carter is still sitting at about $110,000 from actual donors.
Okay, so she is still outraising the incumbent by a wide margin. It's just not the 4-1 blowout the state website implies.
Right. The sheer volume of money is notable, but the underlying source of that $110,000 is what changes the entire complexion of the race.
Okay, how so?
Well, out of 427 total donors participating in the mayoral primary, Carter and Gorton only share 2.
Wait, let me make sure I heard that correctly. Out of over 400 political donors in Lexington, only 2 people gave to both candidates.
Just 2.
That is wild.
It is. Because in a typical primary challenge against an established incumbent, the challenger's primary strategy is usually to peel away the incumbent's coalition, right?
Yeah, you try to steal their supporters?
Exactly. You spend your time trying to convince the people who funded the mayor in the last election to fund you this time. But that is absolutely not what Carter is doing.
Where is her money coming from, then?
Her financial base is almost completely divorced from Mayor Gorton's. Carter is heavily, almost exclusively, funded by commercial real estate firms. We see major contributions from Walker Properties, Codell, and her own firm, Guide Realty.
Okay, I need to stop you right there because the whole narrative on the local news is that Carter is the outsider shaking things up.
Right, the insurgent campaign.
Exactly. But if her money isn't coming from like disaffected everyday voters and she's leaning entirely on commercial real estate and the developable cluster, she's not an outsider tearing down the establishment.
No, she's not.
She's financing a rival establishment. She's basically consolidating a brand new business lane to try and take over City Hall.
That is the exact dynamic the data exposes. She is building a parallel power structure. Mayor Gorton, on the other hand, is running a campaign that barely registers in the early finance ledgers.
Barely registers.
Yeah, her KREF filings showed almost zero contributions through late 2025. Her $38,000 came in very late, in much smaller amounts, and spread very thin.
So what's Gorton's strategy then?
Gorton isn't fighting a donor war. She's relying heavily on the sheer power of incumbency, widespread name recognition, and frankly, the assumption that the preservationist wing will turn out for her by default.
Okay, but a mayor without a city council is just a figurehead, though.
Very true.
So if Carter is building this rival power base funded by commercial real estate, she can't govern alone. Is she pulling council members into this new ecosystem too?
That requires us to look at cross-race coordination. When we track individual donors giving to multiple candidates across different districts, we can see the formation of unofficial political slates.
Like voting bloc.
Exactly. The civic and business classes don't just fund one person, they fund the voting bloc. And in this data set, the quiet center of gravity for the entire election is an at-large council member named James Brown.
James Brown. Okay, what makes his funding so unique compared to the rest of the field?
Well, he is operating as a fusion candidate. Remember those three opposing factions we laid out earlier?
The preservationist horse farms, the pro-expansion developers, and the progressive creatives.
Right. James Brown is the only candidate in this entire 25-person field who is drawing significant money from all three.
You're kidding.
Nope. He has maximum contributions from Ball Homes executives, he has money from West Six Brewing, and he has money from Kentucky for Kentucky.
That is wild. He's successfully taking money from the people building the wall, the people driving the bulldozers, and the people brewing the beer inside.
That's a great way to summarize it, yes.
But how does that connect back to the mayoral race with Carter?
Well, when you cross-reference his donor list with Raquel Carter's, they share 12 high-level donors and almost $13,000 in overlapping contributions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. In local campaign finance, that is a blindingly bright signal of coordination. The commercial establishment is quietly, but very clearly, pairing them together.
So it's an implicit ticket?
Exactly. The ticket being funded here is Carter for mayor and Brown to keep his at-large seat to help anchor the council.
It's a package deal. And going through the Times data, I noticed Carter and Brown aren't the only ones running as a coordinated unit. There is an entirely unannounced slate being run by District 3 candidate Griffin Van Meter.
Yes, the financial footprint there is incredibly clear.
What's he doing?
Griffin Van Meter personally donated $2,250 to James Brown, Christopher Woodall, and Stephen Holscher.
Okay.
But simultaneously, his company Kentucky for Kentucky shows up in the state database as the employer of record for dozens of individual donors who gave to those exact same three candidates.
Okay, I want to clarify something for the listener here because that sounds intense. This kind of coordination, like an individual donating to multiple campaigns or a company's employees all backing the same group of people, that is completely legal, right?
Oh, completely legal, yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, what we're observing is just network politics functioning exactly as it is designed to.
Building a coalition.
Exactly. Local power relies on strategic alliances and shared visions across different districts. You have to build a governing majority to actually get anything done.
Right. But the frustrating part for a regular voter is that this strategic alliance is totally invisible unless you have a data analyst crunching the spreadsheets.
It really is.
I mentioned I went on the KREF dashboard earlier. It is incredibly confusing. I mean, it looks like a database built in 1998.
It's not user-friendly, that's for sure.
No! And the way they group the candidates makes zero sense.
You're talking about the dashboard's notorious bureaucratic flaw. It lungs 16 different geographically distinct district candidates under one generic code called Council J.
Yes. Council J. It sounds like a secret society from a spy movie or something. I was looking at it, and it made it look like there was this massive 16-person battle royale for a single city council seat.
I know, it's ridiculous. It's just a legacy category code the state uses for urban county governments.
Ah, okay.
But the result is that the state's raw data presentation completely obscures reality from the public. Those 16 candidates are running in completely separate districts.
Right, they aren't competing.
Exactly. Van Meter's in District 3, Holscher's in District 5, Maloney is in District 11. They aren't running against each other at all. And as the donor overlaps show, many of them are actually actively teaming up.
But you would literally never know that from checking the official state website.
Nope, you have to dig into the raw data.
Well, we've covered the macro level of this money, the factions, the slates, the terrible legacy databases. Let's zoom into the micro level now. Let's look at individual households.
Okay, let's do it.
We mentioned maximum contributions earlier. The individual contribution limit in Kentucky is strictly capped at $2,200 per candidate per election, right?
That's correct.
And I know compliance officers at the Registry of Election Finance audit these reports to make sure no one is cheating the system.
They absolutely do. And according to the analysis, the data set is remarkably clean in terms of outright violations.
So no blatant crimes.
Right. They specifically look for something called employer bundling, which is sometimes known as smurfing.
Smurfing.
Yeah, that's a mechanism where a company illegally reimburses its employees under the table for making political donations, trying to bypass corporate giving bans.
Got it.
There's zero evidence of that here. However, compliance reviewers do look for specific, perfectly legal patterns that maximize a wealthy family's influence. And the most prominent mechanism here is what we call household maxing.
Here's where it gets really interesting. How does that actually work in practice?
Well, the individual limit is $2,200, but the data reveals 7 specific cases where 2 adults living at the exact same residential address both gave the maximum $2,200 to the same candidate on the exact same day.
So they just double it.
Exactly. And the mechanical pattern is highly specific.
Right.
An earning spouse who runs a firm with major regulatory exposure to the city, say a construction firm bidding on city contracts or a developer needing zoning approval, they max out their individual contribution.
Okay.
On the very same day, the non-earning spouse who is listed on the official filing as a homemaker or not employed also gives a check for the maximum $2,200.
So mechanically, a campaign fundraiser sits down with a local CEO, asks for support, and when they hit that $2,200 cap, they simply ask if the spouse can also write a check to double the investment.
That's exactly how it happens. We see this with the Codell family giving a combined $4,400 to Raquel Carter.
Yeah.
We see the Turner family giving a combined $4,400 to James Brown. And the Goodman family gave $4,400 to Griffin Van Meter. And we also see this mechanism utilized with extended family members. Griffin Van Meter had 8 different relatives contribute, making up about 10% of his total funding.
That's a huge chunk.
It is. And the entry that compliance reviewers generally pause on in these types of audits is Jenny Van Meter, who is listed in the occupation column as a student, contributing $1,000.
See, I look at a $1,000 check from a student or a double max contribution involving a homemaker, and honestly, it looks like a loophole.
Well, it certainly raises eyebrows.
Yeah. I mean, isn't it just a mechanical workaround for a wealthy CEO to completely bypass the $2,200 individual limit by just passing out checkbooks to their family members?
Well, it is the exact fact pattern that most commonly surfaces in actual enforcement investigations across the country.
Yeah.
But we have to stick strictly to the data here. There is nothing illegal documented.
It just feels...
I know, but every adult citizen has their own individual First Amendment right to contribute up to $2,200 to a political candidate, regardless whether their occupation is listed as CEO, homemaker, or student. The campaign finance system relies on self-reporting, and as long as the funds originated from the person actually signing the check, it is legally compliant.
Yeah.
What this data explicitly illustrates is just the mechanical reality of how wealth legally amplifies its voice in local politics.
Yeah, it really does.
Because a working-class supporter picking up an extra shift can perhaps afford to give $50 to a candidate they believe in. But a wealthy household, utilizing the rules as written, can instantly marshal $4,400 to double the reach of their preferred candidate.
It's a completely different scale. So what does this all mean for the listener? We've thrown a lot of numbers out there today, a lot of names and compliance rules.
It's a lot to process.
It is. If you are listening to this right now, maybe you're making dinner in your kitchen over in Chevy Chase or finishing your shift downtown. Why does a deep dive into campaign finance ledgers matter to your everyday life?
Because these aren't abstract numbers on a spreadsheet. They are leading indicators of your daily life. The politicians who win these council races and the mayor's race are going to make decisions that physically and economically alter Lexington. They are the ones who decide if the historic horse farm behind your subdivision stays green or if it gets paved into a sprawling strip mall.
Right, the blueprints.
Exactly. They decide the local zoning laws that determine whether housing supply increases, which directly impacts whether your rent prices stabilize or just skyrocket. They decide which massive commercial industries get tax breaks and which community programs get their budgets slashed.
It touches everything.
Everything. This donor data is a preview of the actual policy battles over Lexington's future. When you see commercial developers funding one slate of candidates and preservationists funding another, you're looking at the battle lines for the next 4 years of city council votes.
I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on today. Based on all of this, we started this deep dive by saying we were looking at the blueprints for the city.
Yes.
But the truth is, we are only looking at the blueprints they are legally required to show us.
That's a very important distinction.
All of this deep analysis we just went through, the $623,000, the competing factions, the strategic slates, the household maxing, all of it is based entirely on what the candidate committees have officially reported to the state database.
And that is the ultimate blind spot in local political data.
The super PACs.
Right. Super PAC-style outside spending, which is technically known as independent expenditures, that money is filed completely separately from candidate reports.
So it's untracked here.
Totally untracked by this dashboard. This is money spent by outside groups on mailers, TV ads, and attack ads, and it is often intentionally difficult to trace back to local donors in real time before an election actually happens.
Exactly. So consider this. If this much strategic coordination, the carefully curated factions, the rival mayoral establishments, the $4,400 household checks, if all of that is happening right here in the visible light of standard tracked campaign contributions, what kind of invisible, unlimited super PAC money is currently flowing through the shadows of Lexington's local elections?
It's a sobering thought.
If you think the cranes in the sky are moving based on the $500,000 we can see, just imagine what kind of city is being built by the money we can't.